Over the years, I've had the privilege to talk to a lot of people who are starting doctoral programs, they're midway, or maybe they're near the end, and they're counting the cost. They're not sure if it's actually worth it. They have family and other responsibilities, or maybe they're just frustrated with something that's happening in the program. It's common. After all, more than half of the people who start doctoral programs never finish them. And there are lots of people who spend years and hundreds or thousands of hours in research and courses and study, and they get all the way to the end and they get to that dissertation phase and they don't finish. They end up in that all but dissertation phase. So I want to talk about that a little bit in this video. Maybe you're one of those people. You're at the beginning, the middle, or the end of your journey, at least the doctoral degree program journey, and you're trying to figure out, do I really want to do this? Is this something I should stick with? So before you think about quitting, please consider listening to this video. Now, I'm just giving my own perspective. I don't have it all figured out. I certainly have a bias, a certain way of thinking about this, and I want to just talk about that a little bit. And let me share a bit of my background as an analogy. I grew up in the Lutheran church, and in the Lutheran church, there's a stage in about middle school where people go through something called confirmation. It's a time of religious instruction, or what we call catechesis, where one is instructed in the faith. They learn about the teachings of the faith and how to be engaged and involved in the church life. And it can last 2 or 3 years, sometimes a little bit more. And then you sort of graduate, at least that's how some people think about it. You complete confirmation. And at the end, there's very commonly a message that's shared with the confirmands, with the graduates. And it's this, it's, you have not graduated. This is the beginning of your journey. Or this is just one stage of your journey. The goal is to embrace a life of learning and growing in your understanding of the faith and coming to practice it. Well, I'm going to use that analogy. You don't have to be a religious person necessarily to get this. I'm just using that analogy because I would say that doctoral study is the same thing. That if you are in a doctoral program and you went into it and somehow you got caught up and focused and fixated on the idea that your goal is to get that piece of paper on the wall, to graduate and to have the diploma, to have that title doctor, to have that accolade or that open door that you think might be possible because you earned the doctorate, well, those are realities, and I'm not saying that those are necessarily wrong or bad, but I will say they're not particularly helpful in persisting and really getting the most out of your experience. I would say that having a compelling why is much more important. Why are you actually studying this? And maybe it is for something very practical like a job. Maybe you're a faculty member already, and in order to keep that job or for rank and promotion, you have to have the terminal degree or the doctorate. And I get that, that's practical. I'm just going to suggest to push that a little bit to the side and think about something that's deeper and more intrinsic and even more important to you. What is it that you want to do in the world? I would suggest that if you're in a doctoral program, you are considering a lifelong calling of scholar. That this is really training to equip people for the life of the scholar. And a scholar is not necessarily some ivory tower person. You don't even have to work in academia. But a scholar, from my perspective, is a person who thinks deeply, who studies deeply, who immerses themselves in the literature and immerses themselves in the study of one or more fields or the intersection of fields. And then you try to take what you learn to discover new truths. And hopefully, in many cases, those truths will be shared that others can build upon in the future, or that can be shared right away to create benefit in the world for a specific population or for a large population of people. That's the life of the scholar. And it is something that is not complete when you finish your doctorate. In fact, I would say that when you finish, you're just beginning. Really, I would suggest thinking about doctoral studies as being part of a community that's nurturing your sense of calling and your competence and confidence to embrace the lifelong calling of scholar. Now, if you consider this, and if this resonates with you, I think that's a much deeper and more meaningful motivation for navigating the temporary difficulties of a doctoral degree program. Yes, it's hard. Yes, sometimes you run into people that you think are unreasonable, and maybe they are. Yes, there are sometimes academic hoops you find yourself having to jump through, and it can become burdensome and tiresome. That is not the core of the experience. That's not really what it's about. Those things happen, and maybe you're going to have to work through and navigate those. Maybe at some point you'll even be able to change it so that it's better for the next person. But if you have that sense of calling to the life of the scholar, you can make it through that. I guarantee you. In fact, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk to individuals and provide a little bit of encouragement and check in with people along the way. I've had the chance to do that with dozens of people over the years, and I consider it an incredible honor and a great joy to touch base with people and to support them, because I actually believe that the life of the scholar is incredibly valuable for society, that the work that you do by going really deeply, thinking incredibly deeply, and creating practices that have benefit in the world, that is a huge gift. I embrace all of this as a calling to love your neighbor, and you love your neighbor with your knowledge and your skill and your ability, and everyone in the world is our neighbor, although you might be called to a particular group of neighbors. You can check out my other video on calling if you want to know a little bit more about that. So that's kind of the core of what I would suggest, that if you're really wondering, is this for me? I would say ground yourself in a meaningful why. And if you have one, and if you can find something that's more important than just getting that piece of paper on the wall, or maybe jumping through the academic hoops you think you have to jump through, I think that's going to keep you much more motivated. So if you find this little word of encouragement useful, go ahead and give me a note in the comment or hit that like button. If you're interested in more content around education, you can check out some of my other videos. If you see what you like, go ahead and subscribe to the channel.